You ever scroll through your feed and see all those post daily or be everywhere tips and instantly feel tired? Yeah, same. Somewhere along the way, consistency got confused with being a content machine. But here's the thing, you don't have to show up everywhere to build trust. You just need to show up in a way that feels true to you and sustainable. Because here's what doesn't get said enough, visibility doesn't have to mean volume. You don't need to be loud or nonstop to be seen. There's a quieter, more intentional way to grow. And it actually works better for those of us who value depth over constant output. There's a certain kind of pressure that creeps in when you're building a business online, especially if you're doing it quietly, intentionally, and in your own way. Everywhere you look, the message is the same. Post more, be everywhere, never stop creating. It's framed as consistency, but let's be honest, most of the time it just feels like you have to hustle more. If you tend to need more space and solitude to create, that pressure can feel especially heavy. It's not just about the time it takes, it's about the energy it demands. Every post, every video, every story takes thought, intention, and presence. And when that pace never lets up, it stops being creative, and it starts feeling like survival. If that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not doing it wrong, you're not behind, you just need to build different. This episode of Boldly Introverted, the online business podcast, is for those of us who don't want to be content machines, who care more about depth than reach, who believe business growth should feel sustainable and not performative. Because consistency doesn't mean constant. And showing up doesn't have to mean showing up everywhere all the time. There's a different way to grow, a way that honors your energy and still builds real trust with your audience. It may be slower, but I believe it's better to be aligned with who you are. So, how do we actually do that? What does it look like to stay consistent without slipping into burnout or performance mode? In this episode, I want to talk about a few things that have helped me redefine consistency on my own terms. We'll start with the myth that more content equals more success. I mean, it can, but it isn't guaranteed, and why that belief is so easy to fall into, but rarely sustainable. Then we're going to talk about what truly builds trust with your audience and why thoughtful, slower content can actually cut through the noise better than a nonstop feed. We'll also look at what it means to create a rhythm that works for you, plus some simple tools to help you stay visible without draining yourself. And finally, we're going to zoom out a bit and talk about sustainable growth, what it looks like, how to trust it, and why it often starts by letting go of the pressure to do more. Let's start with the belief that shows up everywhere in online business circles, that more content equals more success. It sounds logical on the surface. More content means more visibility, right? More chances to be found, more opportunities to connect, more momentum. But in reality, this kind of volume-first approach often leads to the opposite: burnout, disconnection, creative fatigue. If you've ever tried to keep up with a daily publishing schedule or felt like you're supposed to be on 5 platforms at once, you've probably hit that wall, where the content isn't just draining your energy, it's starting to feel empty, performative, like you're creating just to check a box. And when you're building a business that's rooted in trust and values, that doesn't work. It's not sustainable, it's not honest, and it's not what actually creates connection. For many entrepreneurs, this treadmill is especially rough because content isn't just about typing up a few words or hitting record. It's emotional labor. It's sharing your thoughts, your voice, your energy, and doing that on repeat without space to recharge. That's not consistency, that's self-torture. The myth that success depends on nonstop content is powerful, but it's also kind of lazy advice. It ignores the nuance of how we connect, and it misses the bigger picture. That one honest, intentional piece of content can do more than 10 rushed ones. So if you've been feeling like you can't keep up, maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe it's the pressure to show up constantly when what you really need to do is to show up intentionally. That's what I want to talk about next. Why slower, more thoughtful content actually builds more trust, and how to shift into that without losing momentum. Let's be honest, most of us don't remember who posted 3 times yesterday. We remember the post that made us stop scrolling, the one that said something real or made us feel seen or offered a perspective that we hadn't heard before. That's the power of thoughtful content. It doesn't flood the feed, it stands out in it. When you stop trying to produce on autopilot and instead start creating from a more intentional place, something shifts. You're no longer just trying to keep up, you're creating with clarity, with purpose, and your audience can feel that. People can sense when you're rushed, when the message is there just to fill space. But they can also sense when you mean it, when you took your time, when you're sharing because you actually have something worth saying. That's what builds trust. Not the frequency, the felt sense of honesty. And here's the irony. When you give your ideas more space, more thought, more breath, they usually land better. They get shared more, saved more, they resonate longer. You don't need to shout to be heard. You need to speak clearly and consistently in a voice that's actually yours. That's what cuts through the noise. And that's what your audience is going to remember. So, if you've been worried that posting less makes you less visible, this is your reminder that visibility isn't always about volume. It's about resonance. Your most meaningful content doesn't come from a content calendar. It comes from clarity. So, let's talk about how to find a rhythm that actually works for you, and the systems that can help you stay consistent without sacrificing your energy. One of the biggest shifts you can make is moving from I have to post constantly to I need a rhythm that actually supports me. And that starts with being honest about how you work best. Not how someone else tells you to show up, but what your energy, your focus, your brain actually needs. Some people thrive with structure. They like batching content ahead of time, scheduling it out, and knowing it's handled. Others can feel boxed in by that and prefer more space to create in the moment. Neither is wrong. What matters is that it feels doable, not forced. And here's the key. Your rhythm can change. You might have a high energy week where you write 4 emails in one sitting. Then the next week, you barely want to open your laptop. That doesn't mean you're inconsistent, it just means you're human. This is where simple systems can help. Not to push you harder, but to give your future self a softer landing. Tools like Notion or Trello can hold your ideas, keep track of drafts, and take the pressure off trying to reinvent the wheel every time you sit down to create. Even something as simple as a content bank of evergreen posts can make it easier to stay visible when your energy is lower. The goal isn't to be constantly producing, it's to create from overflow when you have it and rest when you need to. When you start creating from that kind of rhythm, one that fits you, something will shift. It becomes less about trying to keep up and more about building from a place of clarity and steadiness. And that's what leads us into the bigger picture. Because once you've let go of the pressure to be everywhere and started showing up in ways that actually feel good, the question becomes, what does growth look like now? How do you build a business that lasts without burning out? So let's talk about what sustainable growth really looks like and why slower doesn't mean stuck. Sustainable growth doesn't always look impressive from the outside. It's not flashy or loud, but it's the kind of growth that actually lasts. The kind that doesn't fall apart the second your energy dips or life gets messy. It's easy to confuse fast with effective. But just because something grows quickly doesn't mean it's grounded. A lot of businesses that scale too fast without systems or without alignment end up overwhelmed, stuck, or burnt out. Not because they did something wrong, but because they were trying to keep pace with a model that didn't actually fit them. When you grow at your own pace, you give yourself time to build trust, not just with your audience, but with yourself. You learn what works, you notice patterns, you make better decisions because you're not operating from panic or pressure. And honestly, Most of the entrepreneurs who have built steady, long term success didn't get there by going viral right off the bat. They got there by showing up consistently in their own way. They built strong foundations, they stayed connected to their values, and they were willing to grow slowly if it meant growing well. Sustainable doesn't mean stagnant, it means stable. It means your business can support you over time instead of consuming you. So, if you've been measuring your progress against someone else's highlight reel, or feeling like slower means you're behind, take a breath. You're not behind. You're building something real, and that's more than enough. You don't need to be everywhere to be effective. You don't need to post daily to be consistent. What you need is a rhythm that honors your energy, a voice that feels like yours, and a strategy that you can actually sustain. That kind of presence builds trust, not just with your audience, but with yourself. And trust is what grows a business that lasts. If this episode gave you a little more permission to slow down and show up more intentionally, I'd love it if you'd share it with another entrepreneur who needs to hear it. And if you're feeling it, a quick review or rating helps the show reach more women building online businesses on their own terms. And if this quieter, more intentional approach to business speaks to you, I've got something exciting coming. We're opening the doors to our new membership, the Empowerment Alliance, on August 4th. Please consider joining the waitlist so you'll be the first to know when it opens. The link will be in the show notes. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.